it had erupted out of nowhere. I mean, we're right now in 2024. I want you to imagine 2014. It's the same. It's the same. There's nothing different other than the threat of AI and war and socially. The world's the same. You go from 1956 to 1966, you have a completely different world. Completely different world. Everyone's going crazy. The opposition to the Vietnam War has got people in the streets. Ken Kesey, Tim Leary, tune in, drop out, all that. This world is changing in this radical way. There had been nothing like it. And in a lot of what you're saying about these experiences happening and people just disconnecting and not having discipline and structure and just experiencing these things and just disconnecting completely from society was the problem. Mm-hmm. That was the problem.
Mm-hmm. It's a major problem. Well, it's still a problem now to some degree because people who are pursuing, let's say, nonconformist freedom don't understand that the replacement for freedom isn't hedonistic anarchy. And that's partly because it's self-defeating. It's also pointless. It's also pointless and meaningless. And it's partly pointless and meaningless because imagine, and this is part of the implication of the story of Abraham, is that the instinct of meaning comes to you when you pursue a pathway that specifies, what would you say, the limitless development of your integrated psyche. But it's not just the psyche, it's the integration of the psyche with all the different levels of society. Like, for example, insofar as you're well put together, you're going to be a highly functional husband to your wife, right? Like your own psychological organization, integration cannot be divorced from the union that you make with your wife. They're the same thing. And then you can extend that to your kids. For you to get your act together means simultaneously that you establish the proper relationship with your wife and with your children. Those are the same thing. And then if you can manage that, you do the same thing with the broader community. It all stacks up musically. And so then mental health doesn't become how your psyche is organized internally, which is what the clinical psychologists misled people into believing. It's more like the harmony that obtains from the psyche upward through society when everything is stacked up properly to the up to the highest level possible of being. And that's another definition of God. So one of the things I tried to do in this book is to actually define what it is that we're arguing about. Because the old man in the sky superstition doesn't cover the territory. So for example, if you look at God in the story of Abraham and you say, do you believe in that God? What you're asking, even though you might not know it, is, do you believe that there is a call to adventure and that following that call will not only integrate you, but serve society in the highest possible manner? And that's a pretty straightforward question. It has very little to do with anything that's even vaguely superstitious. Like, is that call there? You certainly reward it in your children if you have the least bit of sense. And so I've been trying to define what it is that we're arguing about. And so there's another definition too, that you see this in the story of Adam and Eve. So in the story of Adam and Eve, one of the ways God is characterized is as the spirit that calls you on your pride and presumption. So then you ask yourself, well, do you believe that exists? It's like, how often in your own life has pride gone before a fall? Is there some spirit that's operative in being that shows you the error of your ways when you get ahead of yourself or not? And if the answer to that is no, you say, well, you have no conscience? Nothing calls you on your moral impropriety? You're overreaching? No one wants to be near you if you're one of those people. That's for sure. And is that real? So one of the ways God is presented in the Old Testament is this dynamic between calling and conscience, right? So there's the calling that is indicated in the story of Abraham and Moses that pulls you forward to the adventure of your life. And the other side of that is the constraint of conscience that tells you when you're wandering off the straight and narrow path. That's more the voice of negative emotion and threat detection. And calling is more like the voice of positive emotion that pulls you forward and invites you. But you need the dynamic between those two. That's the pillar of light and the pillar of darkness that guides the Israelites across the desert. Jonathan Pajot helped me figure that out. Just flattened me when he laid it out, because I could see the Taoist view of the world and the ancient Jewish view of the world stack on top of each other. And the implication of the story is very straight. It's like you leave the tyranny and you're lost. What guides you when you're lost? The interaction between what calls you forward and upward and the constraints of your own conscience that warn you when you're deviating from the straight and narrow path. That's the definition of God that emerges from Exodus.
And the balance of the mind to be able to figure out which is which and how to apply them. And the balance of the mind, this is why you have to have the least amount of problems in your life and keep your body as healthy as possible. So you don't have all these other things that are influencing the way you interact with the world. You got to have a balance of everything. All of it has to be kind of balanced together in order for you to have
the judgment.
Yes.
Otherwise, you can't see.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. You have to be able to see it. And it's hard.
And you have to want to see it.
Yes.
So why do you want to see it?
Me?
Yeah.
It's just my instinct. I follow my instincts with everything. I always have.
Why?
I don't know. I think because I didn't have a lot of guidance when I was young, and because, I was a latchkey kid, and parents divorced, split, a lot of moving. I think I developed my own appreciation of my instincts, of my thought. And I had seen enough people by the time I was a young boy ruin their lives and and I'd seen these poor decisions right in front of me. I'd seen poor thinking and excuse making and laziness.